The Antarctica mystery solved? Maybe. Let's bring on the remote viewers. Coming up next on Deceptions of the Ages News. Hello everybody and welcome to Deceptions of the Ages News. I want to first send a shout out to my new subscribers. We've sure got a lot of them. The first thing I want to say is hello to Michael or Mike Thomas. He was kind enough to leave some nice comments on my last video. So hey Mike, welcome to the Deceptions of the Ages News channel and club. And I'd also like to just bring to your attention the fact that I do have a Patreon account and I do need to be supported by people like you who want to see this kind of content continue on YouTube. All right, so the first thing I want to do is tell you that we're going to be talking about remote viewing today. We're going to go over the history of the Antarctic a little bit. I don't want to regurgitate a whole bunch of stuff that you already know, but I do want to bring you up to speed on remote viewing if you are not sure what it is and the people at the Farsight Institute. Now, notice that is not the HEINESSIGHT Institute. That is the Farsight Institute, F-A-R-S-I-G-H-T. No relation whatsoever. Maybe if you check the genealogy, I don't know. But we're going to consult these guys in their latest video that they made in their Time Cross project, and we are going to get to the bottom of this Antarctic anomaly. All right, so pretty exciting stuff, huh? But the first thing that we need to do is, as we always do in Deceptions of the Ages, I just want to point out that we cover topics of Latter-day Saints, no longer Mormons. Please check that video. We cover the topics of Latter-day Saints, or Mormons, as I say in my book. We also cover the topics of Freemasons and extraterrestrials and the connections between the two, or between the three, excuse me. I had a hard time in math when I was in school. So one of the topics that we're talking about today is actually two of them, the UFO anomaly in Antarctica and the subsequent cover-up, which of course always involves our friends at the Freemason lodges. All right, so what is going on in Antarctica? Just to regurgitate, not literally I hope, but just to regurgitate the information, actually we'll go back to the Piraeus map that was floated around supposedly in the Ottoman Empire around the 1500s that showed a completely ice-free Antarctica. Well, where did that come from? Okay, big mystery about Antarctica, and then not so much heard about it until we started doing exploration. Admiral Byrd, Roald Amundsen did some stuff down there in the early 1900s, found the South Pole, etc., etc. But all they really found, according to them, was a bunch of ice and penguins, not a real big deal. So not much happened with Antarctica, at least as far as we knew, until the late 2000, maybe the 1990s, when all this information started coming up, I guess maybe thanks to the FOIA, Freedom of Information. But we started hearing things about, well, there was Nazis that escaped and they went in submarines to Antarctica and they have a base down there. And then there was this Operation High Jump, which you all know about, and Admiral Byrd took the fleet down and apparently got their butts kicked, but made some kind of contact with an alien civilization. Now, a lot of things that happened down there, we don't really know what happened, but this idea that Admiral Byrd contacted an alien civilization is based on some comments that he made. And what I see with UFO researchers is that they keep putting words into his mouth. He basically just said, as an aviator, that we're going to have attacks that are going to come over the poles in the future. And somebody misquoted that and said that, oh, there's craft that fly from pole to pole. And it just went on, which I don't think that I've never seen Admiral Byrd actually saying any of these things. So is there an extraterrestrial civilization down there, a Nazi civilization down there? No proof of it whatsoever. All right, so we started hearing this stuff about the 90s. And the next thing that happened was in the 2000s, actually about 2016, suddenly, and it was just happy feet and ice penguins for a while. But then around 2010, 2011, suddenly there's a lot of interest in the South Pole. Now, why is that? Okay, so here are the rumors, or here are the stories that have come out. And the first one I have to bring up is Corey Goode. Corey Goode, as far as I know, I'm going to ask him to come onto my podcast, Books in Hindsight. But as far as I know, Corey Goode has kind of been debunked. And so I'm not going to rely too much on his testimony. Says he was taken to Antarctica and shown a flash frozen ancient civilization of very tall beings, and they had like pyramids and on and on. And so that there was all this interest because this guy comes out and says that yes, there's a civilization down there that was flash frozen. Now, what does that mean? That means that at a point in time, the civilization, a tidal wave or something, encompassed them, and at the same time, they were instantly frozen. Now, to back up stories like this, there is the story of these mammoths they found that had warm weather vegetation in their stomach, and they were frozen in the ice. So something happened like immediately. So flash frozen civilization is one rumor that's going around. And then, of course, you have Antarctic pyramids. And that looked like mountains to me, but, kind of look like pyramids, I guess. And then you have, and now we're going to get into our specifics. You have Lake Vostok. Now, the story on Lake Vostok, and I'm going to put all the sources because I'm just using information from videos, and here's the video that I'm getting a lot of this information from because it's very good. Also, I'm getting stuff from Carrie Cassidy at Project Camelot, and based on some of her interviews. And of course, I'm also going to be talking about the Farsight Institute, which we're going to be talking about in depth in a second. But all of these things, the flash frozen civilization, Lake Vostok, et cetera, all just rumors. But and they go from basic scientific stuff. We found some amoeba and some bacteria down there that are unique and anomalous to the South Pole, to these crazy stories about the Russians diving into Lake Vostok and some squid that is super intelligent kicked their butts, and they pulled the squid out. Now, what we do know for a fact, and this can be verified, is that in 2002, we were the JPL, Jet Propulsion Laboratory, was exploring into Lake Vostok because they were going to go to Europa, which is off of Jupiter, I think. They were going to go to Europa, and they were going to drill into the ice and dig into the water and find out, what was down there, what kind of, if there was extraterrestrial life, and what, looking for amoebas and whatever else. So JPL, Jet Propulsion Laboratory, had the project from the 90s until 2002, at which point they came out and said it has all been turned over to the National Security Agency. And at that point, as far as I understand it, we lost control of the project and it went to the Russians, and that's where we start hearing about how they found this this creature and or organism or whatever you want to call it. So, all right, those are the things that we know. These are the rumors. There's in the what was that series? They're gonna kill me. The Truth Is Out There. Anyway, I could just brain lock. Anyway, the X-Files. The X-Files movie, and the end of it, remember, they had the big UFO under the ice. All right, well, let's start talking about what really is down there according to the folks at the Farsight Institute. All right, now, let me explain a little bit about the Farsight Institute and what they do. They do what is called remote viewing. Now, this is, I don't want to go too much into it because Courtney Brown, who runs the Institute, he explains it very well. So just go ahead and Google him and listen to how he explains it. But there's a long history of this being involved with the military. It has been deemed credible, and it actually works. And the funny thing is most human beings are capable of doing it. So he had a couple of his, or four of his star remote viewers view them, and we're going to talk about each one, what their specific experience was. So the first remote viewer described a cold area, and she described finding a metallic shaped, round shaped object. She did not think that it was man-made, and so she went inside and she saw, and she was surrounded by ice and snow. So that verified that she was actually remote viewing in Antarctica. She went inside the craft and she found a bunch of gauges, and it just looked like a craft, like she said, like an airplane or a ship, or she said a spacecraft. This thing was vibrating, and it was vibrating a lot, and she said that that thing had the capability with its vibrations to basically destroy the Earth. She said it was a very powerful machine, and it could be used as a weapon. It was not a weapon, but it could definitely be used as a weapon. Okay, and then we go into Remote Viewer 2. So on Remote Viewer 2, this guy went and he backtracked in time. And how did that thing get there? So he has that thing flying around in the Antarctic or in the clouds, whatever, and another ship appears and seems to zap it. And so it crashes and it falls. He says it swirls down to the Earth, and it crashes where it stays. So the next remote viewer, another lady, she went into more detail about the inside of this ship. A lot of broken gauges. She said there were a lot of tools, etc. And she said that it was there was somebody in it. There was a body in it, a small body with a big head, and she described it as being gray or green, and that his skin was wrinkled, she said, like if you had held your finger underwater. So she's got some kind of a dead alien organism onside the ship, and she says that there's broken glass everywhere, and she says it looks like a toolbox. And I hate to do this again, but I'm going to have to go back to the last guy. When he started his remote viewing, he said that there were 3 people in a tent, and the one was talking to the 2 other people, that like he was in charge and they were doing something else. And then there was a more muscular person in the background, and he wasn't saying anything. He was just observing, and he's probably somebody from an intelligence agency keeping watch over these scientists. All right, so this machine seems to have been zapped by something. Was it lightning? Was zapped by another ship? We don't know, but it crashed. And then the last person that remote viewed it described a tent, and he described people actually working within the tent on this machine. And basically, he just basically verified what the 3 other people did. And I just want to say this for Courtney Brown's benefit. They did it remotely. They didn't know what target they were using. And this is all scientifically proven to work. So I hope for the people at the Farsight Institute, I did this correctly. Now, what does this actually mean? Right now, some people are speculating that, because we're always talking about disclosure, right? Well, the fact of the matter is, because of the technology grabbing aspect of this by these corporations, there is never going to be any disclosure whatsoever. So forget about that, Stephen Greer. The disclosure comes because they don't lock you up or call you a nutcase anymore for talking about UFOs. That's it. That's the only disclosure that you're going to get. So, but this is really exciting stuff. I really encourage you to look at the Farsight Institute. Again, it's Farsight, like hindsight, but Farsight. And I also want to send a shout out to the folks at the Farsight Institute, Courtney Brown. I would love to have you on my podcast, Books in Hindsight. So with that, we've got some exciting stuff going, and I would like to just encourage you guys to subscribe and help me out, support me on Patreon. Thank you again. Thanks for your time, and we'll see you next time on Deceptions of the Ages News.